Brothers and sisters, we are blessed to exist. Our existence is a manifestation of divine mercy and compassion. The recognition of everything in us and surrounding us being a favor from our Creator, Provider, and Sustainer is the source of true faith. This gratitude is manifest in seeking the truth, the only objective truth that can be relied upon is that which comes from the source of truth, al-haqqul mubin, the clear truth. And that is God. And God has sent prophets with His message throughout history. He concluded His revelation to humanity in the Holy Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. It is through having a deep, intimate knowledge of this that our wellness, our wholeness will be established. We call that salam. So when we say assalamu alaikum, we are saying that we want the true essence of purity and peace that is the divine truth to permeate and manifest around us. So hopefully our kids do not think it just means hi, because it means a whole lot more than that. And I would encourage everybody to have a conversation with your children on this matter. As spiritual beings living and struggling in a physical body, that is a fitna. And our wealth and our children and our environments are a test. By which method will you seek your value? Will it be through the physical or will it be through the spiritual? And that is the test of life. When we think about disease, when we say this disease or that sickness, your mind is naturally moving to, well, the person has a cold, they have a bacterial infection, they have cancer. It's a physical thing. But the mind and soul are equally subject to sickness and disease. The law of nature and the law of God are one and the same. The law of God is the driving force that gives energy and value to the physical world. Otherwise, there would be no purposeful, meaningful, active physical world. It is the law of God, the divine will, knowledge, and compassion that makes it operate the way it does. We have a great scholar from the 2nd century of Hijrah, some 1100 years ago, Imam Abu Zayd al-Balkhi. He said the greatest medicine is beneficial knowledge. And what he was talking about is the knowledge of ayat, signs. There are signs in creation all around you. There are signs inside of you. And there are signs in revelation that teaches you about why they are the way they are and how you should understand them and engage them. And so he has 2 books that are well known. He wrote many books. One of them is The Sustenance for the Soul. And the other one is The Sustenance for the Body. And he says, we must supplement administrations to the body with those to the soul. Meaning, we should not see the way we treat our body, what we do with it, how we nourish it, how we use it, as something separate and different from the soul. Those should be equally considered and they have an interactive effect. So you see secularism from the earliest time is completely contradictory from Islam. And secularism for many Americans means just the government doesn't institutionalize. No. Secularism as a fundamental ideology means to separate God and religion from reality, to make it not reality. And that is started in France and it's all over Europe. And now Europe is majority atheist and agnostic at this point. They're not majority Christian anymore. And this country is moving that direction because our education system is fundamentally, even those of you think, oh, my kids at this Cabarrus school or this Union County school, it's all atheistic, liberal, secular stuff. You're thinking in material, worldly success, right? So Imam al-Balkhi, he criticized the doctors of his time that were starting to put together methods of chemistry and putting together, changing alchemy into a proper understanding of compounds and how they benefit. And so that, and then cupping is a well-known history. Yeah. So with that process, the Imam is saying let's be careful before we allow our understanding of the physical world to outplay our understanding of the spiritual world and the mental world. What he's saying is that the spiritual and the mental have more control over the physical than any other physical thing. Pay attention to what Imam al-Balkhi was saying intellectually and scientifically 1,000 years ago in the Caliphate. Pay attention. He said the spiritual and the mental have. He's saying this because he sees that spiritual and mental are themselves energy that cause movement. Whereas the physical is not in and of itself energy, it can be used to harness mind and the body. You see what I'm saying? So Bismillah. You're going to hear some echo sounding stuff somehow. Okay. I mean, for me, I prefer not to do this at all. I have a very good voice. What do you guys think? Yeah, I agree. Does it work now? Okay. Bismillah. Now, we're going to test Imam Balkhi's idea. Do the spiritual and the mental have so much power over the physical thing? Bismillah. Allahumma abqihi ala ma yanfa'uh. Okay. I'm asking this thing to continue benefiting us as it was created to do. Okay? So he says, هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون? Are those who know like those who don't know? By the way, how many of you have heard of the placebo effect? Those of you that have not, I encourage you to study it. Because it's not just a simple thing like a headache. There have been profound illnesses that people were able to be cured from because they thought and believed that they were taking a medicine, even though it was a sugar pill. We're talking about percentages in the 20s and 30% on many situations. We're not talking about a random, rare, we're talking about something which is why real quote unquote medicines must prove high in the 60, 70 percentile before they're ever approved as a medicine. You see what I'm saying? So يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. God will raise above others those who have faith, knowledge of the spiritual, and knowledge of the realms around them, and those two together become a beneficial knowledge that is raising your status. That's not just simply like in the hereafter and how the angels praise you and how good of a person you are with Allah. It means what you're able to achieve and the wholeness and the wellness you represent will be stronger. So it all starts with knowing yourself, right? Man arafa nafsah, faqad arafa rabbah. Whoever knows themselves can truly know God. They can know their Lord. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. A lot of people think and feel, this is what I'm about. This is why I do what I do. And they say it, and it's an impulse. And that impulse is rooted in a cultural or a affiliation-based impulse rather than a deeply spiritual, sincere impulse. And the difference between the two is if you were not trained as a child growing up, or you have not engaged in the spiritual practice of really deeply investigating, it may sound weird to the ones who haven't done it. Like, what do you mean? I'm just gonna look in my heart and be like, okay, what's in there? It's deeper than that. It's about constantly reflecting upon what you're doing and why you're doing it, and taking a long time doing that. Because impulse is a normal human behavior. That's the animal of us. Do you think any animal knows why they do what they do? Not one of them do. Even the smartest of them, there are many animals much more intelligent than human beings. Many. It's not a matter of how smart and effective you can achieve your goals. It's about you understand the morality and the purpose driven that makes you an accountable, responsible being. And so that process, if you haven't done it, you will have a wrong assessment of yourself. And thus you will think you're good, and you'll think you're pious, and you'll think you're sincere, but you're not really, because you know those are just things you're supposed to say, but you haven't really investigated, is that really what's going on? So we have a structure to our religiosity that gives us clarity. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, right? This lofty book, there's no doubt about it. It is guidance for those who are pious. So what this is saying is, if you study this book, and you study where it came from, how it was put together, what it has done to human beings, what it contains, you will see multiple miraculous truths that will prove, without a doubt, that that book is from God. Again, if you haven't done this, then your very connection with the book is cultural. It's an assumption that isn't based on conviction. So then your behaviors are going to reflect a lack of conviction in the teachings of that book, because you're not sure. You're just assuming. And if you're in a society where everybody claims to follow that book, everybody's just going to assume. But then when you're moved out of that society as you are now, you're going to find lots of conflict internally, externally, and so forth with this issue. So that's why you got to start there. الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. And it says in the book, everything you need to know about your way as a believer is clear and complete and concluded with this book and this prophet. So we don't need any outside to give us the foundations. We can use outside knowledge to help us understand how to apply the teachings of this book, but we don't need new knowledge to teach us what is morality and right and wrong and all of that, right? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The human being was created to be a servant using their free will of the will of God. You have to choose to reject your own selfish will for the will of God. That's what it means to be a servant of God, and that's the purpose of your creation. كُلُّ امْرِئٍ بِمَا كَسَبَ رَهِينٌ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ رَهِينٌ. Everybody is responsible for their own actions. These are fundamental core teachings about the mental and spiritual state. The ultimate value and worth of a person is in this, that we are each and every one of us responsible for what we do, right? And then وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. All you will be having of value is what you chose to pursue. The things you prioritize in your life become your worth and your value. It will become your identity. كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. And your identity is going to come one day and you will not be ready for it for the most part. You have to be generally ready for it for whenever that happens on a baghta. Boom, there it is. Because if you go in any graveyard, the way we're brainwashed and the way our nafs makes us want to, our selfishness makes us want to think, oh, the graveyard, pretty much everybody died was like 75, 80 years old, 90 years old. But actually the vast majority of them didn't reach 60. Yeah? So that's where you have to pay attention to being ready for that moment. وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. So everybody's going to taste death. It's going to happen. It's coming for all of us. And you're being tested with good, meaning comfort, ease, good health, wealth, everything you need. That's a big test because you'll start to think, well, I'm self-sufficient. I have everything I need. I'm good. I'm happy. But what about all the suffering around me? Why is there suffering? Because you should be doing something about it. You should be trying to alleviate and uplift, and you should be sacrificing your comfort for the welfare of others, starting with your family and your neighbors and your community. Al-aqrab awla bil-ma'ruf. The one who's closest to you is more rightful of your goodness than those far from you. This idea that I have an allegiance to people, to a country over there, Islam has never, ever, ever endorsed nationalism of any sort. We are not related to a country. We are not related to this land as a specific thing. We have an affiliation with it, but our ultimate goal is heavenly. It's the hereafter. Our home is heaven, not here. People talk about, when I die, make sure you take my body and take it to this land to be buried. This idea is completely contradictory to Islamic thinking. None of the companions, nobody did like that. Nobody was thinking like that. That's nationalism. That's a worldly, and by the way, post-World War II and Sykes-Picot and all of that, the Western powers wanted to split us up as Muslims. They saw this caliphate and how you didn't need a passport and this to go here and there, and all of these bureaucratic control mechanisms and ways of identifying and controlling people. It was a much more simplistic society where morals could reign, where economic strength was very empowered for much of the time because people weren't being meddled and overtaxed and burdened. And so this is the spiritual realm that we understand. At the end of the day, we only have control over what's inside ourselves and how we want to manifest that. We control our intentions, our thoughts, our feelings, our words, our actions. People say all the time, you made me feel like this. He did that and that made me feel like this. I mean, obviously if somebody slaps you across your face, you'll feel pain. We all know that. But whatever anybody says or does for an adult, you should be like, that's his problem. No matter what they say or do, it should never bother you. It should never, you are allowing it. You're choosing to react to their thing with your control by giving them power over your feeling, right? And if it's hurtful, then you can say, you know what, I don't want to be around this person, right? And so whenever it comes to your interactions in the world, you avoid people who are like that, right? And there are legal systems to protect you from people who are abusive like that in verbal terms, right? And that's why divorce can be legislated. There's so much in the Quran about divorce, yet some people invented this thing that we should live miserable where everybody doesn't like each other and the house is a place of complete toxic misery because this is holy. No, you should not live like that. Either you solve your problem or you divorce. That's Islam. And if you can't solve your problem or won't solve your problem, right? And it has to be the agreement between the two. يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا هُمَا يُرِيدَا. If only one side wants it, it can never be a marriage. These are two connected. So these are fundamental teachings we have. قُلْ قَالَ رَبِّي إِنِّي لَا أَمْلِكُ إِلَّا نَفْسِي. I can only control myself, right? So at the end of the day, we are in control of ourselves, not anyone else. We cannot make anyone be anyway, whether it's our child, our spouse, our friend, our coworker, whatever it is, you cannot control people. قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Plus, whatever afflicts me, whatever hardship I have to go through, I'm comfortable with that. And I have to embrace that with patience because that's God's will and He has every right to do whatever He wants with creation. These are psychological foundations of being Muslim. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. We often use that as like this holistic reaction to the terrible state of the ummah and how we are just being genocidally wiped off the earth and treated as people who are not worth basic human rights. But it's actually on an individual level as well. If you don't effectively try to change yourself and the way you think and how you operate and the way you choose to prioritize what you do with your freedom and your responsible work, then you will not change. You have to decide that. So we ask Allah to protect us and preserve us on the straight path. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Here's where it's going to get really, really interesting. So now we understand the Islamic framework for mental and spiritual health, which both of those are interconnected. For a Muslim, you can't disconnect them, right? Oftentimes, the effects of trauma, usually from someone who was younger, before the age of 16, okay, their trauma becomes a compound mental illness. And again, when you're thinking mental illness, the culture that we have been cultivating amongst ourselves is mental illness means somebody's running around like a rabid maniac saying ridiculous things and all of that. No. Mental illness means someone is not able to operate the way they know they should be operating. When someone knows this is how I should be acting and talking, and this is how I should feel about such and such situation, and they're not able, no matter how hard they try as an individual, to fix that, that is a mental illness. It could, like sometimes people have certain things that aren't a harm to everybody, so it's not an illness that they really need to go unless it starts causing problems. Everybody goes through different phases of mental illness. Everyone, right? So these people, they're not aware of it because they suppress it. When people go through trauma as a child, they suppress it. They don't know how to deal with it. And they see terrible things or people are treating them in a terrible way. And that becomes an imprint on their mind and on their feelings. And so then they just try to, in real time, do whatever they need to do in the situation to make the best of it by whatever knowledge and impulses they have, but they suppress those feelings and they don't deal with it. And as a child, you're not able to properly address it. And a lot of times, quote unquote, religious environments, religion is simply this rituals. Like you read Quran, you say these holy phrases, Alhamdulillah, MashaAllah, Allahu Akbar, and you do salah. But then the behaviors of people oftentimes don't reflect that those rituals mean anything in your life, right? We hear this a lot, okay? A lot. So then the child is now blaming the religion subconsciously because they're like, those religious people did this to me. So now the religion is guilty. Even though the problem was those people who were claiming to be religious are not really on a spiritually self-aware path. They're just obedient to religious teachings in a affiliation way of practice and ritual, right? And so now but the child cannot grasp this point. Just like non-Muslims. This guy the other day, somebody posted on Twitter, this Christian was attacking us. He's like, the Muslims have all these great arguments and they can debate really good in the debates and all of this, but look at the Muslim world. What do they have? That's his point. And he's very convincing to a lot of people, but I could argue with him. I could show you many ayahs and hadiths that will say, this is why our state is what it is. And it's the actual lack of Islam that has caused us as claimants of Islam to be in the state that we're in. And I can vividly show you prophetic prophecy, which is only proving the religion. You see what I'm saying? And so this mental illness that has been suppressed because of childhood trauma, it shows up when conflict arises, which usually is not just in daily interactions with people, right? The people generally have it suppressed, so in their daily interactions, nobody would know about it. The effects will become known in places where it's like family, friends, co-workers that are functioning as a team, then it comes up. Because usually the childhood trauma came in experience with people who claimed they loved them. And so then therefore the way they operate in those circumstances is now coming to the forefront in a weird, toxic, you have one extreme which is complete shunning, I won't talk to you, I won't engage you, I'll completely go behind your back and talk to everybody else about the problem, which they did in their family. Or they'll go right at you with very aggressive, angry, harsh judgment and condemnation, right? None of those are benefiting anyone, and they're completely against Islam. And so many of the times, these people are like struggling with this. Because as Muslims, when we have our flaws, which we all have flaws, and you know, I'm the first to tell you this, and my family can tell you this very much more than you can because of this fact. But when you use spiritual practices and you address those things, you should be able to improve and fix that simply by inner reflection of intentions, reflection over other people's feelings and what they tell you, application of scriptural teachings, and advising each other sincerely. If those three fundamental Islamic methods are used, if there's not a mental illness, it will solve the problem. But if there is a mental illness that's compound, it will not solve the problem. You can read Quran till you turn blue in the face. You can pray and ask Allah. You can claim you're sincere. And you can advise and advise. And you'll see the same problem happening over and over and over. And so this built up trauma, some people are unable to use these tools because their subconscious trauma is blocking their desire to practice these religious ways because of 4 neuroses that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or all of them have become deeply rooted in their subconscious mindset, which creates impulses that they cannot control. So you have the first one is fear and anxiety. Because of childhood trauma, you're fearing this is going to happen, that's going to happen, anxiety. So this creates suspicions. This is what they're about. This is what they're doing. This is what they're trying to say. This is what they're trying to do. Then you have the second, which is anger and aggression. I'm going to show them. I'm going to prove. I'm going to make this point known. This is the fact. This is reality. Let me show you. This is what it needs to be. And if you don't listen, and number 3 is sadness and depression. I can't do it. Everybody's against me. Nobody loves me. I'm ruined. I'm lost. And then last but not least is obsessions. Obsessions are, it has to be this way. I'm thinking all the time about it. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm going to solve this problem, even though you're not doing anything constructive for yourself or anyone else about it. And you keep thinking and thinking and thinking about it. So in this case, someone would need something called psychotherapy. Now, when I say that to the average Muslim, because of this, I would say a little bit of kibr that we have in ourselves. We're religious, we know the truth, we have the Quran and Sunnah, we don't need any help from anyone. Plus the word psychotherapy sounds like some crazy person in a white room with a jacket on, like, oh, what do I do? No, that's not what it is. Psychotherapy is simply someone who's been trained in how deep-rooted thoughts become behaviors, and how feelings that have not been resolved and addressed become problematic behaviors and the person cannot control it. So here's how it works, because I've been to therapy on multiple occasions, alhamdulillah. They'll ask you a question, and they'll ask you another question. And then they'll ask you a question about something completely seemingly unrelated. And then they'll ask you a question about your childhood. And then they'll ask you a question about your answer to the question. Sounds weird, huh? But what they're doing is, they know that to tell you, which is my struggle as an Imam and as a Quran and Sunnah, I like to preach. This is what it needs to be. Nobody wants to be told, especially in a vulnerable moment, this is how it has to be. They need to be brought into feeling it on their own. They need to see it on their own terms. They have to come to recognize the problem and address it in their own way. And so that's why psychotherapy is always about helping people pull out those deep-rooted feelings and addressing them. And what happens for millions and millions of people is that they feel after many, many of these sessions, they get to a point where now they don't feel a burden. They're able to address that feeling that now is no longer a subconscious driver of impulses. And so now they can control, if you're a Muslim who's using scripture and you know about the Quran and Sunnah, and now your sincerity that you probably had the whole time is able to thrive through behaviors that you can control. Because now you don't have that deep down thing preventing you from doing it, right? And so most Muslims have been wrongly conditioned against this thing. But I can tell you I've seen many, many, many divorces, many, many ruined relationships between friends and family and all of this, where the simple problem is people weren't willing to address the underlying problem. And because they felt like it's just me versus you, when really there's something deeper here. There's a whole history versus you, right? A whole life experience, right? That is the reason why this is happening, right? And so if people would address that, then it's easier to make it me and you. And if we're believers who are sincerely trying to do good, then me and you can solve our problem. Because we want good for each other, right? So may Allah make us sincere believers, give us the fruition of Quran and Sunnah. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us beneficial knowledge and benefit us with it and help us to reconcile our feelings and our thoughts and to give us the means to express ourselves and to engage in the most effective manner so that we can collectively reach the goals of doing your will and serving your purpose in the world, that we may be worthy of your contentment and the intercession of your Prophet ﷺ, that we may hear that beautiful phrase, salam, right? That peace will be our eternal reality in your presence for eternity. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.